There, I'm just making sure I'm recording here. You guys just want to pop in where you're coming from this morning or this afternoon or this evening. Just pop that right into the chat. Lovely to see you all here. I didn't even see you around. Hi, good morning. Congratulations. All right, wonderful to have everybody here. Thanks for joining me. I know this always isn't the best time for everyone, but we've got a lot in Asia. It looks, yeah, Toronto, sorry. There's recording too, so if it's too much, we'll make sure that you can come back to look at that. Good morning. Australia, great. Yeah. All right, so we'll just, it's 9 o'clock on my time now, so we'll just wait a minute for everybody to join us. And just a reminder, I'm gonna pop this into the chat as well. There is a list of questions and answers. If you feel like you have some burning questions that have not been answered by your review of the guide or will not be answered by today, which hopefully they will. I have tried to go through them and answer questions, which is actually why I was looking up one of the answers. But it's great to have you here, and again, I'll pop that into the chat as we get more people in again. But you have editing privileges. Please go ahead and ask as many questions. And if I'm not answering that, please go through and ask again, because yeah, I would love to be able to answer your questions. And I think that yeah, it's really important for our questions to be answered. I want you to feel really confident going into the end of our school year or the beginning of our school year for some people, depending on where you are in the world, with the answers to these new changes. So welcome, good morning. I'll just put that in the chat again for those of us who are just joining. That's the question and answer that's also available from Lenny's information that she has sent to you. But welcome to the new personal project. Let me just get myself together. Here we go. So I'm admitting. Go. Hey, my name is Amber Rhinehart. I am the NYP coordinator here at Lincoln Community School, Ghana. I am an INS and a Langan Lit teacher as well. I've been an NYP teacher since the year 2000, when I first began my teaching career in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I have since been in NYP schools for over 2 decades. I'm a workshop leader and I'm a personal project examiner as well. So I am well-versed in IB and NYP and project. I've been doing it for over 20 years. So it's great to have you all here. And I hope that by the end of this session that you will have some new knowledge about the personal project. So here's kind of our agenda. I do have an assumption that some of you have knowledge of the current personal project. So we will talk a little bit about the changes and what those have meant and what those look like as well. But we're looking at sort of what is the same. We're going to look at the aims of the current personal project. We'll look at the goals. We'll look at approaches to learning skills, how that has changed. We'll look at the process journal has changed. The plan and success criteria have changed just a little bit. We'll look at the 3 criteria now, the report, the format of the report. I do have a list of resources, and if we have some time at the end, we can do questions. I will share this PowerPoint with Lenny as well, so she can put that up on the site, because there are hyperlinked resources in here, including, thanks Lenny, including ones that I have made. I've given you a checklist for the report for all 3 criteria. So those are in there. We'll take a look at those. All right, so here we go. Let's start. So what's the same? There are some things that are the same. Not everything has changed with the personal project. And every few years, as we know at NYP, our subjects as well, they go through iterations of review. And what's nice is that the spirit of the personal project has changed. Has kept the same. That has not changed. What has changed, and as an examiner, as I'm personal projects right now, I can tell you that the current one is less clunky. It is much more streamlined. And I think those of us experienced with personal project understand that B2 and C1 can be highly problematic for our students and be quite confusing. And there's always seemed to be a lot of jumping with personal project. Now it is streamlined. It is like the student is a guide leading the hand through the readers through their process. It's really, it's easier, it's nicer, it's calmer. It's just, I'm quite impressed and I'm really happy actually with the changes that have been made. But we can see that these elements are the same, right? You guys can all read those. So it feels good that your current knowledge of the personal project is not all lost. Okay, what have changed? So current aims, there used to be, there are 4 aims now over 3 categories, right? And these will translate into the criteria as well. And we'll see that they are much more streamlined criteria too. So what we have 4 aims, and the personal project is an opportunity to inquire, act, and reflect, right? And we see this as the inquiry cycle. So they're using the aims, they're using the objectives as bringing the students through the inquiry cycle. One of the questions that came up was that there's no more focus on product, and there is a little bit with the success criteria, but the personal project has always been about process, right? As the culminating assessment of the middle years program, right? We are teaching our students how to learn, and that is the process. And so this will again focus on that increase cycle. So we look at, they want to explore an interest that is personally meaningful, right? We have student agency still in here. It still is the personal project. It's not parents' project, right? It's theirs, and that spirit is still there. They also need to take ownership of their learning by undertaking a self-directed inquiry. So that part is still there. In the ACT section, we want them to transfer and apply skills. Sorry, I have people in the waiting room. It's not admitting. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, so we want them to transfer and apply skills in pursuit of a learning goal and the creation of a product. We'll see that learning goal again, and that will be a new change. And we want them to reflect. So we want them to recognize their own personal growth, their own development, and reflect on the success of their product. And again, it consists of a process, a product, and a report. And the aims correspond with the criteria. So again, things that look familiar to us. All right, so the goals. There's 2 goals. In the current version, a student has to be quite explicit about the challenge of the goal. And we know with A1, if a student doesn't make explicit, even if it is personal, we don't agree that it's challenging, it's still challenging for the student. They can only reach the 5 to 7 bands if they talk about the challenge. That no longer exists. But now we have a learning goal and a product or outcome goal. We'll see these again in objective B with the ATL skills, but they have to say what they want to learn and what they want to make or do. And in one of my documents, I've actually given a list of verbs for what that might look like. So what do they want to explore? What do they want to understand? What do they want to learn? What do they want to research? And then the product or outcome is what do they want to make or create or build or perform or display? And so they are 2 very distinct parts of the goal. So as you can see in the objective, you have state a learning goal for the project and explain how a personal interest led to that goal, and state an intended product or outcome, and develop appropriate success criteria for that product or outcome. So we see some similarities, but that distinction of learning goal is new and it's important. Okay. All right, so again, what do we want students to be able to do, know, or change at the end of this process? And again, I've given you some verbs here that may make that clear. And the product goal, it's what they will create in order to demonstrate that their goal has been achieved, right? What evidence will they create? What evidence will they show at the end of this that the goal has been? So again, some more of those verbs. Any questions on this part? I'm just gonna stop share with us, try to see everybody's faces. Are there any questions on the learning goal or protocol? Great. Okay, and just around, I'm just seeing that it is recorded. So we'll have that and make sure that Lenny has it as well. Great. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So good thing about Zoom is you do everything at once, but then you can't get all these things off of your screen. Okay. There we go. So approaches to learning skills. So this is a bit different. And one thing that, sorry, I didn't mention with the goals before is that the context is now optional. They do not have to choose a link to the global context where they're learning. Or I know in my school and with my personal project coordinator, we have discussed that for the first year. We will still make that a requirement as a school goal because we still want the students to have meaning for their goal. When they want to have meaning outside of a school project that their teachers told them they had to do, right? And so they can link it to one of the global contexts. We'll still do that. We'll still have them do part of their research on why this matters in the sort of outside school world, but it is not a requirement. Approaches to learning skills is a bit different as well. So here we have, there's choice. So they do not have to do all 5 categories like in the current However, they are much more developed because of that. So there's, again, the reason behind this where they wanted it to be less prescriptive and more natural. And what will happen is students will gather evidence. And in my school, what we'll do is we'll have them create a Google Drive folder for each of the categories. And it will be to collect evidence, and they'll put that evidence into the appropriate category. That's investigation skills, whether that's thinking skills, right? And at the end, when they go to choose, oh my gosh, sorry, there's still people coming in. I have 7 right now, and they're all, sorry. So anyway, they will choose after the end of the process. They'll go back through that, but they'll go back through their portfolio, if we want to call it, and it'll be a curating process instead of a generative process. So they will say, okay, which one makes the most sense for my learning goal? Which category makes the most sense because of the evidence that I have for my product goal? And it is much more developed. So they're going more in depth within one ATL skill category, opposed to all 5 that may not have been relevant, right? And we know that in the collaboration strand as well, it may not be, and they don't have to do it in the current guide. So yeah, so process from left. Oops, sorry, just reading over my notes. No. And we'll see that in criterion B, which is only ATL skills, and explain how the ATL skill, and it says skills. We, in my school, are going to do 1 for each and a different 1 for each. It should not be the same ATL skill for both the learning goal and the product. And it looks at how they were applied to help achieve their learning goal and how the ATL skills were applied to help achieve their product. I know in my school, we say 1 for each, 1 category for each, at least for the first year. Okay, I see some hands raised. Sorry, I can't.
I wanted to ask you, like we give the goals when you're stating the goal and criterion A or in the first criteria, do you have to give the 2 goals separately, or one goal statement can constitute learning goal and the product goal, both?
I mean, I think that's a student choice. I don't think you have to have 2 distinct sentences, but I think it might make, for clarity's purpose, and for the ability to develop both of those goals, it might make more sense to have them separate. But there's no requirement to have one.
There's no format as such which you have to follow, right?
Sorry?
There's no format as such that you have to follow.
No, just like the current guide, there's no format of how one's goal is stated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But yeah, again, like I said, you have some of those verbs, and I would use some of those verbs so that they know that it is they are 2 distinct goals. Okay, like in the current one, like their learning goal could be their product, right? And we've seen that quite a lot, right? We've actually seen that it's the same, right? My goal is to build a boat made of recycled, like plastic water bottles, right? Like that, their product is the goal, but now they really want to make sure, like, what do you want to learn how to do, and what do you want to make or create? Okay. Hands raised. If you have a question, you're more than welcome to just blurt it out. Okay, let me just check the chat. Okay. All right. So, process journal. So at my school, we are no longer going to call it the process journal. The process journal is no longer a requirement from the guide itself. We're going to call it the portfolio. Because I think process journal was always a bit of a misnomer, may not be the right word, but it certainly was misunderstood by our students, right? It is not a journal in the sense that, like, it's not a diary. It's not, this is what I did today and this is what I'm going to do tomorrow, right? It really is a portfolio of evidence of the process. And that may be, and it should be, mixed media, right? We should have multiple different types, whether that's from research notes, whether that's an interview, whether that's the plans that were created, right? We should have a multiple media from all of this. And that's how we're going to sort of frame it. And again, it's not required for the new guide, but it is highly recommended. I mean, they have to show evidence of their process within the report. So it's, yeah, we should have it. And again, we're going to call it the portfolio. We're just going to call it the portfolio process. And again, it's very similar to the current guide. It's student choice. Medium of evidence should reflect what part of the process is being documented and saved, as well as what ATL skill. So again, at my school, we're going to choose to do this by ATL skill. So they will just start dropping stuff into a Google Drive folder, depending on which category on they. How this looks different in the report is that it is embedded, which is just the most, I think, beautiful change they could have thought of. So instead of jumping to the appendix, right, back and forth, it is a part of the report. So again, there is no minimum or maximum of portfolio evidence that is in the report. However, what we're going to say to our students, you should have at least one piece of evidence for every strand. And in the checklist that I give you, I also give examples of evidence that could be shown for that particular strand. Questions on this, because this is a big change. We'll get to report format, which is a bit more complicated as well, but questions about the process journal or the portfolio? Okay. If you do, pop them in the chat, pop them on that question sheet, don't worry. So plan and success criteria. We've seen this before. It's a bit different though. Students have to create an action plan and they have to create success criteria. We know what this looks like, right? We see this in our INS, can't even talk, INS criteria. We see this in our design criteria, right? And we see this in personal project, right? Very straightforward. They have to create an action plan. However, they have to link to their success criteria. So what are they doing in the process, and how is that linked to how you're going to score your product in the end or your outcome in the end? So they have to be very deliberate with what they're doing matters. So they will create a detailed action plan, and they should develop that success criteria for the product and to determine the necessary steps or actions that will be required to meet that criteria. So there will be a whole other column or whatever in their, in their action plan, in their timeline, that is directly linked to the different criterion that they will have in their success criteria to score their product or outcome. So this action plan will be part of establishing the foundation to whether or not the goal was achieved. And it will require some research, as we know, right? And we see that in Objective A, present a clear, detailed plan for achieving the product and its associated success criteria. Okay. Let's see. Yes, Naima, you will have access. I'll give this to Lenny, no problem. It has hyperlinks in it too at the end, so you will have that. So here's an example of a sample plan with, hold on, with success criteria. So you can see, just like before, they have to have the time, they have to have dates, they have to have the task, it has to be broken down, it has to be product specific, it can't just be, I'm gonna investigate here. They can't just use the coordinator's timeline and then use that as their own, right? They have to make it specific. They have to-do lists, and then they have the relevant aspects of the criteria here. Right, a lot of you use Access FM, right, which is the design criteria. They can use maybe parts of that as well. Right? What does this have to do with your audience? What does this have to do with your form? What does this have to do with your function? What does this have to do with cost? Right? And so it's very simple, but it's deliberate, and I like it. Okay, I thought I saw a hand up. Are there any questions?
Hi. This is Heba from Egypt, and my question is related to the part for the embedded evidence. I believe the slide before, 1 or 2 slides before. Now, does the student have to include any captions or labeling for the embedded evidence within the report itself, or it should be just left similar to the example you have just presented on the previous slides?
No, I would absolutely choose either caption or label it and then reference it within the report. I think any embedded evidence that is not acknowledged means that it's not relevant.
Okay, thank you.
Not assuming any connection. So either a caption or reference within the report. Yes, great question. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Criteria. Here we go. So this is also much nicer. There are, as we can see, 7 strands, not 12. And they're just so much nicer. It's so much, I have to say, as a supervisor, it's so much easier to score these. And it just makes more sense. And I think if it makes more sense for me and as an adult, it certainly will make more sense for our students. So you can see, and those criteria are related to the inquiry cycle. And it's basically what they're doing, how they're doing, and why they're doing it. And so in this what part, this inquire part, we have their goal, we have why they're doing that goal, right? How they're related to that goal with the both with the learning goal and with the product or outcome goal, and then this plan with their success criteria. Objective B is applying those skills. That's how they will do it, or the act part, and it's the ATL skills that were applied to help achieve their learning goal, and the ATL skills that were applied to help achieve their product. Objective C is the why, or the reflection on it, that they will explain the impact on themselves and their learning. We've seen this before. That is D3 of the current one, and evaluate the product based on the success criteria, which is the current D1. Right, so not a lot of change, but it's so much more concise. Any comments or questions on this? Okay, I know it's a lot to process, but you'll have some time to look at this again. Okay, so the report. This I think might be the most confusing part. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this one. Okay. So I've also hyperlinked the new guide at the end of this presentation, and this is where we have a lot of questions. So I do want to spend some time, and I want you to feel very comfortable to even ask some questions, even if they've already been, asked in the questions sheet. So limitations are now in pages, not in word count. There are no minimum page numbers, and there are, however, maximum page numbers. You guys can just, oh, here we go. Okay. Make sure we're all muted there. Okay, so here is table 10, which you will start to become quite familiar with in the guide. And what it says is there's a limit of, if you have 15 pages within your report, you are not allowed to have any recording. They are saying that there is an ability to have a combination of audio or video files and written files. What is not counted in this page limit are 3 things. The academic honesty form is not counted towards the page limit. The list of references, whether that's a bibliography or a works cited, is not counted towards the page number. And there is a new requirement, which is actually an old requirement, I think from 2009, that there will be a cover page similar to what we see like with the TOK exhibition or the extended essay, right? There's a cover page for the personal project now, filled out by the school, which will not be required in the page number submission. There are some font sizes that we'll get to as well. It has to be 11-point font at minimum, and it has to have at least 2 centimeter margins. Everything has to be legible on screen at 100%. I cannot, as an examiner, zoom in. So don't try to make captions tiny. Don't try to like fit things in or an image that has writing on it that I can't see, because I won't count it as an examiner. If I have to zoom in, it is like it doesn't exist. So this really becomes a curating process for our students to choose the best pieces of evidence that show their ATL skill, that show their learning goal, right? If you look at the exam on IIB, there's probably 7 pieces of evidence within reports that have scored at the highest levels. These are your format types that are allowed, your file types. No other file types will be allowed. And audio reports will be available on IIB by summer, I have been told, from the head office. What this means, however, is that even if there is a recording, if a student is doing an audio report, they have to have some documents with it, which would be similar to like a Google slide presentation like this. So they have to include some static documents within their audio report. You cannot just turn in a recording. If a student is giving evidence of the product, which we know in the current version is a separate file, it is no longer a separate file. Evidence has to be embedded within the report. If that evidence is a video, a documentary, like me filming the soccer tournament that I planned, then that comes down to then it will be shown as a recording, and then only 14 pages will be allowed. Okay. I see some things in the chat. Okay. Someone, did that answer your question? They make a video for their product, they would just, like now, we only allow 30 seconds, right? So the students would be allowed 1 minute for their evidence of their product, and they would have 14 pages. So yes, Christina, if you include a title page, it will be part of the pages here. Same thing with table of contents, thank you. Same thing with table of contents. You don't want our students to do that. They will start page 1 right at the beginning. There will be a cover page from the IB that will have like, biographical information, school information for them, but they don't need to have a title page because of that. There is no maximum font size, but I think 11 is reasonable. Sometimes some people like 12, but because it's a different font, it looks different, but that's fine. Yeah, I would say like if it's academic and kind of normal, it's your default, it's always good to do that. So the only thing that the IB has said is that 11 is minimum with 2 centimeters margin. And again, as long as it's academic and legible. Lobster is probably not appropriate for a font choice.
Kindly correct me if I'm wrong, if I've understood correctly. If some student is sending a 9 minutes recording, audio recording, then he or she must have 6 pages of documentation done on a presentation or a Google slide. Is that right?
Up to 6 pages. These are maximum lengths.
Okay.
But I would not allow a student, I would not allow one of my students to simply talk to me. I would want to have some sort of visual with them, some sort of PowerPoint to help as well.
And these 9 pages are apart from the appendix and cover page and the bibliography.
There are no appendices anymore. There are no appendices.
So
So-
then in these six pages, there would be some evidences,
Yeah.
some kind
Yeah.
of talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Again, the
Thank
3 pages that are not included in this, the academic honesty form, the bibliography, and the cover page required by the IB.
Okay, excuse me, an extension for the same question. So if the student is presenting or is the product itself is a digital product, like a documentary or a video or an interview with someone, are the students expected to speak about the process in that video or audio? The process of how they come to achieve the product itself, or the product should be just displaying the content of the product itself?
So I think like what we have now, the product can stand alone.
Okay.
Will be discussed within the report based upon the requirements of what the report has. So for example, that process will go into that ATL skills. Right? It'll go-
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Thanks, Lenny, for that. There are 3 examples on my IB of various different levels. And what you will not see, however, you will see levels for each criterion, but you will not see a final grade boundary. Like everything that the IB does, we will not see formal grade boundaries until after the first examination. So we won't see grade boundaries from a 1 through 7 score until it might even be November, might be the first, but I think actually it's June. I think it's June. But we won't say anything before November for sure. I mean, we can guess what those might be, but we don't have any idea of what a final 7 will actually be until the first examination period happens. And that has been common practice for years and years and years and years. Susan, I'm not sure how it will be uploaded in IBIS. I would imagine like everything else, we'll find out later. But if the current ways that we upload our personal projects to IBIS indicate, the report will be one, and then we will have the ability to submit the cover page, the bibliography, and the academic honesty as separate files. But we'll find out. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. We've already said this a lot, so this should be review for some of us. So appendices, that is a spelling mistake there. Appendices are no longer required, right? And you shouldn't have them, right? The appendices should now be embedded with the report next to that part of the report that is related to the piece of evidence. Okay. The report, bibliography, and academic integrity form, the last 2 are not included. We've said that. Evidence of process and product are embedded within the report and must be clearly visible at the size submitted. Again, unbelievably important. I cannot tell you even how many times now that I don't give credit for things. Like I cannot read it, right? There's so much evidence put into those 10 appendices at the end that it's impossible to read. And therefore it's useless. So students should be careful to ensure that their report is a distinct component of the MIP personal project and not just a collection of evidence, right? That it has meaning and value. We've talked about 11-point font size and 2 centimeters margin. This is one that comes up all the time. Audio and video must be recorded and submitted in real time. I've answered that on both of the question sheets as well. I think what the idea is that they don't, like, we want students talking about their process. Like, so I'm like, you're going to be filming me talking about my process. It's not going to be collections of videos that are in post edit and that look really, really nice. It's going to be me talking about it in real time. So yes, of course, like, you know, if there's a documentary or like that you made as your product, like you should have that cut, right? And you could have that. That's obviously an edited piece. But I think what they don't want to do is have kind of they want it to be sort of natural, and they want it to be real time. Lenny, you have a question.
I was just gonna say, I think basically what they mean by that is that it's almost as if that they're doing a live presentation to their school, to their teachers, to their supervisors, and you're hitting record. So it could be that they're standing in front of a PowerPoint presentation, or that they're doing something just like how you would do with like a language acquisition student for a DP. You know, you're in a room with them and you press stop and start. And that's what they mean by real time.
Yeah.
Instead of it being all carefully spliced together into a jam-packed thing. It's just like a live presentation.
Yes, exactly. Just looking at these, video age. Yeah, so if you have something visual, it should be, it's a document and not a video. So this has come up a couple times with my students with their products. They have, they've written a story, let's just say. They've written a 20-page story, and they want to take a 30-second video of them going through, and like, so you can see all the pages of the story. And I'm like, well, that's not what that is. Like, they just want to be able to see parts of the evidence. So if you have a visual aid within your video, it has to be submitted as a document. So my PowerPoint, if I'm doing the PowerPoint, I can't just include that with my 9 minutes and then include something else. That PowerPoint it still is static, and it still is a visual aid. Again, yeah, no title page. Don't put anything extra that is required, or else it will be part of the page limit. A lot of words on this page. I apologize, but I thought it would be helpful. You'll have time to go into it afterwards. Are there any other questions that are coming up about report?
Students do kind of what we've got here, where they've got a PowerPoint and they're talking to it, and the evidence is in that PowerPoint, and how would that be encompassed?
That would be part, so if you go back to that table, that would be part of the page limit. And I would imagine that a slide is going to be counted as one page. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to show you a couple of these, what these resources include. These are all hyperlinked. You will have access to these. This is the support material on my IB. If you are not logged into my IB, please talk to your coordinator and make sure that you do get your username, because the PRC has unbelievable resources, particularly now for this personal project. They have done, I mean, I know, Lenny, you've been in there. They have done like a guide for students and supervisors. They've created an introductory PowerPoint that you can use or modify for your students. There are 3 samples there. They have a lot more information than I think I've ever seen of any other iteration of the personal project before. So there are a lot of helpful resources for you on there. Please go download them, keep them, have them, right? There are 3 samples of the personal project of various different levels. So you can see, you can see kind of what an 8 looks like, what a 3 looks like, and use those both with your faculty and your students when you introduce this. They created this handbook that you have. Here's the introductory presentation. I have included some of those resources from the IB. Here's the question and answer sheet that we had already started, and I will continue to look at that. So please add more questions if they were not answered. These are the new things that I've included for you. So this one, see how slow my internet is today. Okay, so this is what this has, and I did this for my school, and so you might see some optional parts in here, but that we will do. So basically, this is Objective A for planning, the different strands of Objective A, and then it's like a checklist for students to use when they go to write their report. So for example, in the learning goal and personal interest, they should make sure that they explain what they want to learn. They should identify what initially sparked their interest and explain its connections to the goal. Describe what makes your goal personal, right? And so I've just given them kind of a checklist for them to follow. Again, for our school, we will make this a requirement. They will have to connect to the global context, but I put it in here for you as optional. I've also given a list of possible evidence that could be used, that they could embed within this part of the report. You have one of these now for each one of the objectives, and you might even see Some of these hyperlinks might even be to some of Lenny's stuff, because I've always used some of her ATL stuff as just spot on. So I've used it. So, and given credit, but I've used it in here. So you might see some of those as well. Lenny?
Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that the recording of this session and all the fabulous resources that she's shared, I will put on the IB Educated Chat website next week sometime, and I'll also put like a reflection of this weekend on my blog with some of these links as well. All the people that are running these sessions are volunteers, so thank you so much for putting so much time and effort into doing this. I have put a link to your LinkedIn so people can add you on there, and I can endorse you as a teacher trainer or endorse curriculum development. This is a thank you, so thank you so much. This is so helpful. And yeah, I'm excited for the new personal project. I think the students are going to produce some really cool stuff. So thank you for guiding us.
You're so welcome. Then thank you. No, it's always a pleasure. And you know, Lenny, I don't know if you know a lot about Lenny, but she shares everything she ever makes, and she just makes incredible things. And for me, that has totally been an inspiration and made me rethink when I thought I would just put everything on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I'm like, no, like this, it needs to go out for free. Like that's what we do. I have been very lucky with my career and where I've been and what I've done and what I've learned. I mean, I've been in the NYP for 20 some odd years. Not a lot of people who have, and so, and it's not always an easy program, and I get that. I know that even after 20 years. So I feel like it's a duty to share. So
adding to that, right? Like we expect our students to do like service. So this is kind of like teacher service, is like sharing resources, volunteering to run these sessions. So I think it's really good to do. But also when you run these sessions, or like when I organize this stuff, I learn so much. Like, yes, I've put this weekend together, but I'm learning so much from every single session I'm at. And even though people are given this stuff for free, it does come back. Like you will get offered opportunities, maybe it helps you in your future career. So if any of you are wanting to run an IB Educated Chat session in the future, but you're reluctant, it really is beneficial. Gives you the good feelings as well.
Yeah, thanks, Lenny. Now, there's one more thing I just wanted to point out, which was with objective C. They have put the order of C1 and C2 as first. It's the impact of the product on themselves and the world, and then the evaluation second. And again, it doesn't mean that this has to be in that order. And one thing that we discussed was that for structural purposes, it may make sense to switch those around. Like ending the report with the impact just makes, to me, more sense and it makes more sense as a conclusion. But again, that is not at all an expectation, but I just think it just makes more structural sense and organizational sense for a report. So that for me is the end of this. I see a lot of thank yous in the chat, and that's really like, thank you. You are very, very welcome. And thanks so much to Lenny for organizing this. This is no small feat. And I'm not sure if you saw in the beginning, she had her little baby on her lap. So she's a new mom, busy, just published author. I mean, just and a teacher, and a human being who has hobbies and interests in the outside world of this. So thank you very, very much for joining us today. And I really appreciate your time and interest. And there we go. Hi, little bub. So thank you very much today. I'll stay on for a few minutes afterwards if anybody wants to ask some specific questions. But again, this will be all on Lenny's site, and you can access the resources there. Thank you.
Hi, Amber. Can I ask a question, please?
Of course.
Thank you. I still am looking for some clarity here. I mean, I've asked this multiple times earlier also, but still. So one of my students is looking at, interviewing certain experts for his project. Mm-hmm. Now, if he wants to produce that as an evidence as a part of his ATL skills, what is the best way he can show the evidence of that oral interview? So it's not a written interview, where he has posed some questions in the form of a questionnaire. This is going to be a one-on-one interview. So the student is very interested to show that as an evidence. What is the best way to do it?
And it sounds to me like that would be a recording and just, it would be an excerpt of that interview.
Okay, so that's going to be part of that 1 or 2 minute
Yep.
recording.
Yes.
Okay, so then my next question is, let's say the student has a product which is a video product. Okay, so let's say it's a documentary, and then he also has couple of other interviews also. So now, does it all come together? I mean, how will that entire the video recording part be organized? So will the student say that this is what you're going to hear now is an interview, and then he says, okay, now what I'm going to show is the product evidence? How is he going to organize the audio visual recording part apart from the written report?
So one thing I cannot answer is whether they will, like if there's 9 minutes of recording, whether it is one recording or multiple. I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that question because that will depend on IBIS uploading. But what I would imagine would make sense for the student is to include some titles within the video, right? Like this is now, like it has to be labeled. Again,
Right.
like the piece of evidence that goes in, it has to have relevance and it has to have meaning for somebody who this is the first time that they've seen this. So if I don't know why the student is interviewing or who they're interviewing, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I shouldn't have to figure that out through the course of watching it. So, so I would imagine that any sort of like title that came up, you know, interview here at this time with this person for this purpose, that would make the most sense. But again, I do not know the answer of how many files. I mean, it looks like there could be multiple because there's different formats, right? I could have an audio only file, and I could also have, you know, a video file. So I mean, it could be where you could have multiple files with that, but I do not know.
Probably the student can say it's a product making process and the learning that I have, you know, gained when I was doing the process. So in 2 different titles that can be put up, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point I would make. It just has to have to make sense, right? I think that's our main.
True. Yeah.
But that's a great
All right.
question. I think that's one for IB answers. That's a great.
I think I'm going to drop a question to IB because I'm very sure that many students are going to come up with this thing of wanting to upload more than one file, or they may have one audio file, one video file, and then there is going to be a question, can I upload more than one? So I think I'm going to ask this to IB. Yeah.
No, I put that in the questions right now just to remind me that you're exactly right. That's a question that I know I will have. So good. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amber. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Yeah, please go ahead and please unmute yourself and there's no problem. We'll be pretty informal here. Kaibala, I think you're not you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry for that.
No. It's the line of the year, right? Don't worry.
Yeah, the biggest challenge I'm finding is right now I have a student for personal project who is very intelligent, and so he is stuck with a thought which I am not able to move from. Make him move from, or build on it. So he is not clear about how will he bring in a meaningful product. Now what he wants to do is he wants to explore consciousness. So he says, yeah, so I have no idea, like, then further when I says, no, I just want to know what is the relation between the brain and the consciousness. And there is some curiosity there, but then he's not able to build on it.
Right.
And I'm finding it very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think the 2 questions that you have to ask your student is, that's what he wants to learn, right? So we already have a learning goal. What is he going to do or make with that? And then what may be helpful in this context is a context. Why are you doing this, right? Are you, like, and who are you doing this for? We had a student who this year researched belief systems, and she came up really with like her own, like her own statement of belief. And it was pretty powerful, right? She used like, the UN, she used a UN human rights document. She talked to, people from various religions, Baha'i, Christian, Muslim, she was just talking to different people about where do you get your belief system from? And then so she created her sort of like her list of, and that was it. That was her product, right? So to create like who she was and what a really powerful place. But I think like what your student needs to figure out is what is he going to do with that? And he could very well write a report on it, right? I mean, we always try to shy away from research reports for personal project because my God, they have to do them in every other subject. Like have the one time where you don't have to do that. But sometimes we do have students who that's just what they want to do. They've never had this opportunity to explore this topic. And, exploring a topic for just to, increase one's knowledge is valid in and of itself.
Yeah, so I asked him, to come up with 3 ideas so that I might, get him into a comfort zone, in fact, selfishly for myself to guide him.
Yeah.
So he gave me 3 topics, but I'll just read, and they all are like towards same. What
Right.
is consciousness and what causes the phenomenon of consciousness?
Well, honestly, good luck. And I mean, I think if you ask him those questions, and I also put that on the answer sheet as well, that a bit more direction with that. So
okay. What links consciousness and intelligence together?
No, again,
and then he's
great research topics, but I think he has to come up with a product for that. So good luck with
exactly that. No product. See, he's saying the product, a big chart which links all points of research, giving solid and factual evidence of where consciousness and intelligence, the 2 fundamental aspects of how we perceive everything around us, meet in the middle. To explain the chart, I will also be creating a PPT to present along with it.
I think that's a good idea. So thanks so much for your thoughts. I only have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure that I've answered your question both in the document and in here. I just want to make sure that we answer any other questions. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Sure.
That's fine. Thanks so much.
Sure. So I see, anybody have any other? So Liz, I see your question here. Research has always been mandatory. It's part of the inquiry cycle, and it's part of that first criterion A as part of inquiry. So yes, students have to embed their goals in research, which actually makes, when you go to apply the skills for ATL in criterion B1, research is a nice marriage, right? It makes a lot of sense that the learning goal has a lot to do. Research skills makes for a highly applicable ATL skill to choose for that one. But yes, they will have to do research. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, and Liz is the same. Yeah, so they have a product goal, but what do they want to learn? What do they want to learn? Okay. Any other questions?
Amber,
I have a question. I'm sorry, you can carry on. I'll go after you.
I said, where might we find your presentation and the checklist? Or is it going to just be there in the MYP chats?
Yeah, so if you look at, Lenny has that Google site, right? And she's going to put everything up there on the Google site. This recording will be both on the YouTube channel and on the Google site. Yeah.
And links to the presentation, yeah?
Yeah. So the presentation will be there, and then everything is hyperlinked in the presentation. Yeah. And if there is a problem, I mean, Lenny, I'm around. We'll make sure you get those. Don't worry. Okay. Great.
Thank you. I appreciate this.
Of course. You're so welcome, Lisa.
Can I have a quick question?
Yeah, please.
Just to make sure the audio, no matter whether the report is a written one or the audio plus the pages, it must cover all the criteria of the personal project, right?
Yes.
So it can't be, the audio can't be just the product. It's showing the product, but it should cover all the criteria. Yes. Just like in the written one. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Babs. And then the IB has told me that summer 2021 they will have examples of audio reports on my IB.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Who else?
Yeah. Can I go ahead with my question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So according to the new guide, it was interesting to know that some of what you want to do can be driven by a sense of service. So my question is, if the product what one of my student wants is culminating into a service activity itself, is that okay? Or is it better to have a fine line, a thin line between what a service project would be and what a personal project should be?
No, no. I mean, service has always been a natural link to the personal project, and it's a wonderful link to the personal project. And so remember that products can also be outcomes. They can also be events,
Yes.
right? And as
Yes.
long as we have evidence of that event or that outcome, that's absolutely fine, right? And so there should be, I would say photographs are wonderful pieces of evidence for those kinds of outcomes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Malik, I think you had a question as well.
I'm the one. Yes, so I have two questions. It's very short. The first one has to do with, you know how we have for the evidence, they give you a requirement to meet 5 still photos, or that's for the previous, for the previous person project, you should have 5 still photos or 10-second videos and things. But for this current one, as evidence, can they have to share one page to show the most visuals of what they to show as an evidence for their reports? That's the first one. The second one is not a question. It's just to thank you so much for your Padlets. It really helped us for our personal projects. Thank you so much. Very grateful.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. So to answer your question, Malik, is that there is no requirement now, like the 5 pages, the 30 seconds, the 1 page, the 30 seconds, the 5 images. There's no requirement or limit on what is evidence of the product, as long as there is evidence of the product embedded within the report. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but
the video, 1 minute is the option. So I would do as much as 1 minute then if it is a video. Yeah.
You know how sometimes our students would like to maximize the space they have on the sheet. So then they want to put about 4 still photos as evidence on 1 page. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as they're within the 15 pages. And as long as we can see those photos and as long as they are referenced within the report, either by captions or titles or within the actual body of the report. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, if they have the space, yeah, sure.
That's fine. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. Let's see. Yes, of course, this will be recorded. So it is recorded and it will be up on Lenny's Google site. You'll have that. So 3,500 words, 15 pages, 11 font. I mean, again, as long as the requirements are met within the format structure, that the number of words do not matter. So 3,500 words is not even on our radar anymore. It's the 15 pages, 11 font, 2 centimeters margins that are important. Liz, I'm not sure do I need to scroll through what the learning goal would be? Is this the yarn? Sorry, I'm trying to find. Okay, making yarn bracelets. So I think this is where we need to go. Hi everyone, I'm back. My internet went out. Sorry, sorry, I'm here. Okay, thanks for staying. Oh, it's just like school, isn't it? So Liz, to go back to your comment, I think it has to do with what the students, like, what do they want to learn? Do they want to learn about themselves? Like in this, what is the purpose of them doing these yarn bracelets? Is it to calm them, right? Is it about, in a year of a pandemic, like it helps them, concentrate, it gives them purpose, it gives them relaxation, or is it crafting, right? Is it something to do with, is it a cultural thing? Is it does it have to do with what her grandmother did, right? Or something along those lines. Like, I think the student has to figure out why they want to do this. And that's where the global context can come in and help them. Okay, great. Oh God, that was helpful. Okay, looking at the chat here. One person asked, just to me, is there a minimum number of ATL skills to be covered? 2 is the minimum. 1 for learning goal and 1 for, one for the product goal. I know for the first year that we will do this, we will tell our students only 1, because I want them to go in depth. And I think they can, of course, do more, but over and over again, all of the literature from the IB is that it is about the depth and it is about the ability for students to analyze and apply those skills in the process and in the final product. So I think for our students, one for each is where we will do it for the first year and see what happens. Okay.
I have a question, Amber. Could I go ahead?
Yeah, please
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So the question is that many of my students have ended up writing books, and they have found it really not very interesting to kind of show the pictures from those books that they have written in the form of still images. So could the evidence be, in the form of images in the report, while they also speak about it in the video, perhaps show the entire book through the video medium? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's totally possible, but as long as they meet the requirements of those, the maximum numbers, absolutely. Yep. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if
Thank
they're
you.
going to show the book, right, a minute might be all that's needed, right? Just to show that final book. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay that in case I want to show a book right now, that I am visible in the video, right? So the student is kind of, I mean, there's no candidate, I hope there are no ethical other issues related to it, where the candidate will be seen in the video since it's real time.
No, because they're all, it's only with one examiner. There's no child safety issues with the students being seen. No, because there's also no biographic information. We don't know the student's name. We often don't know the country that they're in. We certainly don't know the school when examiners get to it. So no, and I have some examples of that right now, like a student who was singing a song and they were in the recording studio. Like I saw the student in the recording studio, but I have no idea where in the world that student is. So no, and it's only me, the examiner.
And thanks for this wonderful workshop as well. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Okay, I've got a lot of questions enough in here. And Arya has asked a question about, can writing an article be considered as a product? It can. I mean, I might say then who's the audience of that, right? What is the purpose of the article? Just because that we don't have the challenge part of the goal anymore as a requirement, we still want to make sure that the student is doing a project that sustains 25 hours, right? And that is still a requirement. That, is this something that the student can do in a week? Then it's not a personal project. It's certainly a passion project, and it's certainly interesting for the student, but it's still not a personal project, right? We have a 9-month timeline in my school, and what is the student doing that can sustain themselves for 9 months, and is it of that challenge? So I think that when we look at our products, we want to look at, does that equate with the 25 hours as well? Liz, to go back to your question, I think always with community and service, we want to make sure that this is, we want to call this service learning, right? Or services action. So it's always about, why is the student teaching these children yarn making? Do they need that, right? And so that first part of any service learning is, what is the needs of the community, and is she meeting the needs of the community? And service learning is always reciprocal, right? If you do anything about Kathy versus Kay, that it's not just me going into community and saying, oh, look, here, I have something for you, go. It's also me learning from that community as well. So there should be some sort of reciprocal relationship always with our service activities, and initial research needs to occur about, why? Like, why do they need that? And I think that would be, exactly. She's not learning, and then what's the point? So I think that's where we start. Why? Yeah. Good luck, Liz. Good luck. Okay. Any other questions? It's just after 10. I just may have time for 2 more questions if we have any.
Can I ask one last question?
Sure, Meena.
Is there any specific requirement for number of images to be used, like some specific ratio or?
Nope. Just like before, there was no requirement of appendices, right? You had 10 pages, but it didn't mean that you had to have a minimum number of appendices within that. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so thank you so much for your time today. Again, all of these resources will be available to you through Lenny's site, and I will continue to answer those questions on our Google Doc. So thanks so much for your time today, everybody. Take care. All right. Bye.